maybe our Mexican friends can tell us, because just 2 days ago in the news, they signed it. They're looking. The president of Mexico is looking to fight narco traffic in Mexico, and they're considering hiring for a $15 billion contract with Blackwater. And why? Maybe because Blackwater is the best in the industry. Maybe because they shoot first and don't ask any questions. And maybe that's exactly the market they're going for. Maybe they don't want to be like bringing humanitarian aid into Iraq. They want to go out there and get the job done and do the right thing, in their opinion. But I don't agree. But Blackwater is not down. They had a bad market strategy, and in that particular case, it didn't work for them. But they're back. They're back. They're looking for more contracts. They're looking for work. So this opens up a lot of issues to discuss. Legal issues. What is the governing body that's going to say, hey, Blackwater is allowed to be contracted by a government, but who's to stop a non-government agent like FARC? I don't know if there's anyone from Colombia here today, but those people could hire. Why can't they hire not maybe Blackwater, but another industry, one of their competitors, to help them overthrow the government? What's to stop them? They have the guns. So there's a lot of these issues that are coming out. And actually, if you look into it, the Balkan issue, before they were even there was even a government, they were contracting military contractors. They were in Kosovo. They were even in Katrina. They were in the Pakistan earthquake. They're doing all sorts of operations all around the world. And there has to be some sort of legal precedent standard, something set up, so that we actually can control these kinds of companies. But we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen yet. Thanks.
Oh, Mom.
Any questions? Chris?
Yeah, it's mentioned in that video that a lot of the people working for Blackwater were former members of the military. Did you find any links or any accusations of links between the actual military, the government, and this private contractor? Do they work together in Iraq? Do they share information? Are they seen as doing the job that the military won't do, so the military doesn't get a bad image?
Well, they originally started off doing these, more non-combat operations and doing, controlling facilities, controlling areas. And then they sort of, as the war escalated, they moved into, they had a contract with the CIA. They were going on search and seizures, looking for high-profile individuals, and definitely working with the governments and the military. There you go.
Do you think this is a case of not being able to internalize your externalities, in the sense that you have a private company doing what was previously done by governments and their armies, and affecting third parties, innocent bystanders, but not being not having to respond to anybody?
Exactly.
So you just see this as basically as comparing it to pollution or something like this. They're not able to internalize their externalities and what the consequences of that can be.
Well, I think it's a good example of that, because what happened to them is they eventually it backfired. It did internalize because they didn't have the joining strategies. There's other companies out there that do focus, like with the Red Cross, and they only do humanitarian aid, and they have the policy of making their employees responsible to the laws of the local government. So if anything goes wrong in the local government, they have to deal with it there. So that puts a lot of pressure on their employees to not go, trigger happy, shooting innocent people.
I just have a comment to Chris. Is that when you ask the question about the government, something that we saw that is very interesting is, and we discussed, is that the government kind of outsource these activities to them. So how far and which type of activities can you actually outsource something that is normally a governmental decision? And if they are outsourced, is the government the one to respond either with a market strategy or a non-market strategy? And it's not clear.
Yeah. And another issue is that they're not the only company out there. There's companies in Iraq, and the same employees at Blackwater, when Blackwater left, just switched companies, stayed in Iraq.
Just in conclusion, as we're wrapping up, point out one thing that is really important as you're sort of thinking about this issue, because this rise of private army is going to continue. In fact, it's actually a return to something that used to happen. used to have mercenaries in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, of course, right? But your question at the beginning was somewhat misleading at the beginning of your presentation, right? I mean, clearly, it's much more justifiable that there ought to be a market for private security. If I work as an oil company, an oil company,
Right.
and I'm being sent to Iraq to actually explore the feasibility of a joint venture, I need a bodyguard, I'm going to go to a private company for that. Providing support for a State Department mission is a completely different thing, right? And usually the idea is if you're talking about protecting government employees, that's first and foremost the task of the U.S. government. And what the U.S. government has done around the world is they have in part outsourced security for the embassies, for example. But again, it's a different issue if you're standing, sort of guard as a private security firm outside an embassy. You're the first at a checkpoint because, the U.S. Marine is actually behind the gate, as opposed to having combat helicopters, flying, above the State Department convoy, firing down the people. So, there are various degrees of outsourcing, there are various degrees of private security that you can provide. And so,
Right.
This company actually, did have to a certain extent a non-market strategy, which they got as close as possible to the Bush administration, get, incredibly lucrative contracts without any kind of local accountability. And the Bush administration, went for it because it's basically the way they also thought about, protecting the U.S. military. The U.S. military is immune from anything that they're doing in Iraq, under Iraqi law, right? So, the problem is that in this particular case, the loop came around through the largest population ever, the U.S. population.
Part of the problem there with the U.S. government and the military protecting so much Blackwater in the beginning is that because so many of Blackwater employees were former military, they still saw them as their brethren. So, because of this model they have of, okay, we protect each other, and working so close together in the CIA raids and all of this, it also became the government protecting Blackwater operations.
Absolutely. I mean, the State Department has a security service. There's armed security personnel who work within the State Department. But it's a relatively small group. They aren't capable of protecting the huge mission that the U.S. is in Iran. And there is this presumption that the private sector does everything better. And in the U.S., there's an outsourcing from, anything, healthcare being the start, now through prison management all the way to, fighting wars. It goes back to fighting wars on the cheap. And in the end, they end up being much more expensive, not just financially, but certainly in terms of cost of human life and production costs. So, huge debate. Thank you very much, guys.